Hey everyone, I'm Jay.
I'm Fish Sticks.
And I'm Sophia, and welcome to Witches Betwixt.
I'm a motherfucking wizard, y'all. My belief is
Yeah.
important. My belief changes reality. So if I already load myself up with, oh no, the next month and a half or 5 or 6 years are going to suck ass, what am I doing? You know? Like, so I don't want to do that.
You know,
I don't mind everybody else talking about it, but I just don't get into it. You know? Sorry.
That's actually kind of something on a side note of something that I started fucking with today. Psychological priming, like deliberate. I have, get this, a subliminal messages application for my phone where you write the messages that pop up on your screen really quick, and you can control the duration for like how long it's on the screen, how often it pops up, and it can be like literally whatever you type it to be, right? So you can be like, I could just have it and it could say like drink water and like fucking fuck off really quick to the point where like my mind isn't like
That's
seeing
hilarious.
it and I'm
I
like,
love that.
oh, I still want to drink water. But then like it's in there and you can like start stoking your phone with like subliminal messages of things that you need to be fucking doing.
Hey, if it works, fucking do it.
Drink water. For my ADHD ass, it actually does, yeah, because the more that you see something, like you ever been like scrolling Facebook and suddenly you're like, man, I could go with a Subway or like some Subway right now. The fuck am I thinking about Subway for? And then there's an ad on the thing you haven't noticed, and you're like, well, shit, you know, it works.
Well, I guess I'm gonna have some fucking Subway.
You have to like advertise shit to yourself.
Honestly, like we live in so okay. When I was in school, we had to learn 1984. We had to learn Brave New World, and everybody used to say, "Oh, 1984 is the way that the world's going to be in the future." No, it's Brave New World. We are drowning in choices. We have an excess of pleasure, and we barely know how to keep ourselves alive anymore.
That's fair.
We barely even know what we want.
I remember reading 1984, but I never read Brave New World. I think I should probably do that and compare the two.
I've literally wanted to do that before because it's honestly, I only went to high school from 04 to 08, and they made me read Brave New World in a Catholic all-girl high school. And
wow.
That was still, yeah, I was like, holy shit! What?
Right. Dang.
I still haven't gotten to see the movie adaptation because that's the one streaming service I don't pay for is Peacock.
God.
In today's episode, in today's episode, we actually do have a topic instead of us just getting together and being like, "What the fuck are we talking about today?" It came up in our Discord. So if you're not in there, join it because that's where all the cool people are. It came up in the Discord that people wanted us to revisit talking about balancing magic and mundane life, and so that's what we're gonna do here today. So I was just curious, did anyone kind of want to start out this? Did anyone have any kind of particular thoughts on this? Sure.
Okay.
Take it away.
This is a joke, but TLDR coming from me, don't. No, I'm kidding.
Don't balance your magical life. Don't do it. Don't.
Well, don't. Okay, I'll elaborate on what I mean by that to kind of start us off. I really kind of had to chew over the question, how do you balance your mundane and your magical life, right? Because I kind of didn't understand it, right? Like, I think it verges on the question of how one actually goes about their craft and whether or not they're in or out of the broom closet, right? Because to somebody who's like really freaking out, I don't really need to balance anything, right? Like I was on a phone call with my grandmother of all people this past week, and I mentioned to her that, you know, I do magic because she's like, oh, sometimes I talk to grandpa, you know, I miss him. He's been gone for 10 years now almost, and because actually no, it has been 10 years this year. He passed away in 2012, so he misses him. And I was like, you know, grandma, like a big thing of what I do is actually magic, and it worked with ancestors and like the revered dead and stuff. So like that's not silly at all. That's like a huge thing that a lot of people do. And like she was just like, oh, that's awesome. Like, she didn't even bat an eye for a second. I mind you, this is like my non-religious like Irish prairie grandma who's like super chill about me being trans and everything. Like she's 100% on the level sort of thing.
That's
so
awesome.
Yeah, but even then, like I don't give a fuck anybody in my life if they don't like me talking about magic or me saying I'm a witch, then they don't really got a place in my life, you know? And I don't necessarily flag that much. Like I'm not that person who's walking around with like a bunch of occult tattoos. Like I'll actually have symbolism hidden in the imagery on me for sure, 100%.
Right, yeah.
But I'm not like fucking walking around with like a pentagram on my chest. Not to like throw shade at people who got that, because if that's really something that's great for you, fucking rock that shit, right?
Mhm.
But I don't flag. I don't really have much occult jewelry. I don't even own a linking sigil. Like I was actually thinking about getting a ring recently, that Fish brought up. And so people kind of don't necessarily get that vibe off of me, and it's nice that I can kind of catch them on and off angle, because I just look like I'm gonna be like this whatever kind of girl they make up me to be in their head, right?
Right,
So
yeah.
I don't necessarily understand how to delineate the two, because they're just kind of there. Like when I make my coffee in the morning, I'm still gonna pour the cups to my dedications. I have one by my door in my room that I pour for a specific spirit, and I got one on the house altar downstairs. I have like my daily devotional prayers I do and shit. Like it's all just kind of integrated. Yeah, that's kind of where I want to start off with it.
Well, it's when you talk about like balancing your life and your magic. I didn't so much go for. I didn't take the question as, are you out about it? Do other people know? It's like, how do you balance your personal practices with the other things that you do on a daily basis? Like,
Mhm.
how do you immerse yourself in the notion that reality is inherently magical and that you're doing magic all the time, whether you're aware of it, conscious of it or not, just like every other human being is? Because it's a process of reality. We interact with reality in ways that we don't understand. So like that's happening all the time. It's just how often can it really be actively on your mind when you're taking out the garbage, when you're washing dishes, when you're going to work?
Yeah,
It's
and that's exactly kind of it.
but like there is something to be said for balance, I think. And it doesn't seem like it's as big of a deal for folks that don't spend time on the internet as much. And that might be a problem of the internet, not of magic. Because you've got all these people that are glued to their social media 24/7. They're talking about magic, they're interacting on that level, and that's pretty much what they talk about, and that's the bulk of their socialization on any given day. And that's great because it creates this this great focus on the subject. But at the same time, there inevitably comes a point where they hit that wall and realize, God, I need to touch some fucking grass, y'all.
Yes.
And it's a thing. Like it's great to accept these things about yourself and do these things, go through these processes, but it's not the whole of the human condition. It really isn't. And trying to make sure that you don't lean too hard into one thing and neglect everything else is important. It legit is the same as work-life balance
Do you
in
have
corporate terms.
But yeah, to jump off of what Fish just said there, I have really seen it go both ways, right? Like, I guess for me, why I said don't try to balance it is because I don't necessarily have a struggle trying to balance the two. For me, it's like the mundane always takes kind of priority because it's omnipresent, it's there, and it's kind of smacking you over the head sometimes, right? And it's like doing magic practices, sometimes you're in that zone where you're lit up, you're on fire, you love what you're doing, it energizes you, and you're fucking pushed to do it, right? And then we also have those stages where like you're doing 8 days worth of meditation, you're 4 days in. If you skip a day, you're going to fuck the whole process and you have to restart because that's how that specific thing works. But then you just don't have the spoons and you kind of drop out and you don't complete that process, right? To me, the struggle has always been like having the time and the spoons and the energy to put into the magical work. Because if I'm not in that space where I'm lit up with wonder and amazement, it can be kind of tiring. It does kind of get to be like a job at times. And I notice other people sometimes it swings the other way. They can spend all of their time like doing magical stuff to the point where they start um just not looking at mundane activities with the same level of like value. to say. Like, I don't want to say that as like a judgment about any person or anything, or like saying that people think that in particular, but like it seems like it's always a balancing act, right? And I find that being in the middle is always the hardest place to get to, and it's where everybody kind of wants to be, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, there's a potential, and this is part of why I don't like the undercurrent that I see in a culture where people believe that because they are magicians in some facet, whether they call themselves a magician, whether they call themselves an occultist or a witch, that they are somehow elevated past the point of needing to do certain things. And I think that has to do with this most recent generation having been raised with Harry Potter and like the notion of the Muggle versus the the purebloods and whatnot. It's like, no, everybody is capable of doing magic. It's just some people are more aware of it and more actively taking agency over it than others. That's the only difference. So that doesn't make you special. It just means that you are aware of this facet of your existence, whereas other people are focused on other things. So you're not better. So you still have to do all these things, and there's nothing wrong with doing them. The last thing you want to do is demonize shit like housework to the point where you're like, oh, this is so beneath me, I can't do this. I'm a motherfucking wizard. It's like, no, you still eat and breathe and shit and sleep just like everybody else does. So don't pretend that you're better. You're not. You're just another person who's living a different life.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've also noticed those attitudes kind of tie into very classist mentalities too. Like a lot of the stuff that's beneath those people is stuff that's like low class work a lot of the time. Like it's like, I don't want to do my housework. Like it's just get a maid to do it or whatever. Like it's that kind of beneath me mentality that you see in people who just have so much money they don't have to fucking worry about anything.
Well, it's not even just that. It's the whole idea of if you personally devalue these other things that you need to be doing, you're going to be more likely to be imbalanced in how you do shit. So like if you're spending all your time working on magic, like this is the most important thing I'm doing, this is the only important thing I'm doing, what else, what's happening in the rest of your life? Like what's happening with your relationships with your family? What's happening with the state of your house? What's happening with your career?
Ideally they should,
you have to keep these things. No, it's okay. You just have to keep these things within a threshold,
And ideally they should work with each other and play off each other. Like the reason my relationship is good with my family now is because I did a lot of magic, and that magic was shadow work and looking at myself and how like my interactions with them went, and how like my childhood formulated me into be the person that I am, and why it pushed me away from my family because I didn't like the person I had become because of the things that they had done to make me who I was, like it's interdependent, and when you start tugging on one thread of the tapestry, the whole thing moves with it, so if you're, I would say, be aware of the type of magic that you're doing, because not everything needs to be like spun up curse work to fuck up your enemies, or like really abstract astral stuff that doesn't necessarily do anything on the planet. Like it might further your understanding of something that's abstract, and that can be really cool and very, very important, and actually one of the most important like psychological exercises you could do with magic. But like if part of your issues is, say, that you have issues motivating yourself to doing something, can't you use your craft for that as well? Like if you have issues with your family that you want to solve, because not every family situation is solvable or salvageable, then why wouldn't you want to put your craft into that too? It's not all necessarily about like talking to dragons and trying to cast mage fire.
God, that's the other thing. Like one of the things I see people get very up in arms about in culture communities, like especially mixed like groups of people who do different things, is the notion of, well, I do this and this and this every day. It's like, if you don't do the LBRP when you wake up and when you go to bed, you're not actually a mage. It's like, get fucked. No, really. Just go out and go fuck yourself, because everybody has to balance this shit on their own. Everybody has their own daily practices that they do, even if it's just, briefly thinking about this. You cannot go at somebody for not making this a whole ass like job when they have other things to worry about. We're in the middle of a pandemic. People are worried about paying their rent. People are worried about paying their bills. People are worried about, food shortages. It's like, no, you can't just spend 6 hours a day doing nothing but mage shit, unless that is your job too. And, if it is, great. That's awesome. Still, you probably need to go out and touch some grass, same as anybody else does. but like it's not even about armchair versus active work anymore. It's like, you know, you see people making these high-handed statements and judgments about what is and what is not. It's like, fuck your no true Scotsman bullshit. This is magic. We're motherfucking wizards. Come on. It
We
gets
over
tiresome.
people as shit, by the way. That
Sorry,
shit is
what?
just no, sorry. I was just trying to add on.
No. Let's hear it. Come on.
I know, I was just trying to add on to like the people who say like you have to do this every day or you have to do this at a certain time every day. It's like that's just like ableism, bro. Like not everybody has the ability and not everybody has the resources to do these certain things. Like if I can like get up and like brush my teeth and like run my hands through my hair, I'm like I'm good. Like that's cool. Like but people don't take that into account.
They really don't. They don't. And they create these very unrealistic expectations that most likely the people who are screeching the most about how this makes you a mage or this doesn't make you a mage, they ain't doing it themselves. They're just trying to be better because other people's opinions of their practice fucking matter to them, which they shouldn't. Just in case anybody listening to this has any question about that, no. Your practice should have nothing to do with anybody else's regard or opinion of you. That shit is meaningless. You're a magician. You do your own work. Most of magic is completely subjective. That being the case, their opinion doesn't fucking matter unless you let it. So if anybody comes at you saying, well, no real blah, blah, blah does this, it's like, no, just tell them to eat your ass. That's the response.
That's kind of like been my phrase for like the past couple of weeks. I'm just like, eat my ass, like to everything. I was finding it kind of interesting that you both kind of interpreted you Fish and Sophia, you both interpreted the question in a slightly different way. Like you interpreted the topic a different way. And what is interesting to me is that I find that the question is inherently twofold, because sometimes with witchcraft, what we sometimes mistake, or with the occult in general, is there is a practice part of it. There's a work element to it, a training, a scholarly, you know what I mean? It's work that we do. But for some, and like there are atheistic, practitioners out there, but for some it is also a spiritual, devotional type of practice as well. So it kind of goes twofold, because I think about people like I couldn't imagine someone who's Christian or Jewish or Muslim. I can't imagine like they would say like, how do I balance my religion and my mundane life? Like I couldn't imagine someone like that asking that question, because it's just inherently in their lives. It is their life and it is what they're doing. But that's where witchcraft is a little bit different from just like a religion, because it's not it is religion, but it isn't a religion. You know what I'm saying? So
It is if you want it to be.
right. But there is just this element of, we do often feel like we have to balance, and I think a lot of that is because it's a closeted practice still. Like, not, you can't be, it is contingent on sometimes on whether you are out about your magic, about your about what you're doing. I wanted to ask you earlier, Sophia, are you out like at work, like in your workplace? Like if someone was like, if magic came up in conversation, would you be like, fucking right, I'm an occultist, like hell yeah?
Yep.
Okay.
I have openly done magic to aid a production at a different point and said to somebody, they're like, oh, it's gonna rain. I'm like, well, maybe it won't if people actually talk to them and ask them politely for it to not rain on the production sometime. And you run into people like that, especially in film, because there's so fucking many occultists. They would lose a quarter to a third of their workforce if they were to discriminate against people based off of having weird magic belief systems. Like I catch people straight up wearing amulets and shit. I've met a ton of other practitioners. I had a day where I sat down with somebody who works at the same company with me, and we talked hard fucking shop theory, like we would do on the podcast here for hours, because we were like positioned at the same spot, and it was raining, so we were just tucked under an awning, so that's when we had the chance to have that conversation. And like we talked about like magic and time magic and just really obscure shit for hours on end. So yeah, I'm 100% out like that. I don't necessarily go out of my way to bring it up if it's not relevant, but
Mhm.
if it comes up in a way that is tangible, absolutely.
Yeah, and I like that you mentioned, bringing it up in a way that it is relevant, because sometimes this is a mistake that I think people in their youth, aka me, I have also made this mistake, is like when you come to terms with something, or you come out about something, or you've embraced something in your life that is not the norm, right? And you're practicing witchcraft, or maybe you're just doing Buddhist meditation, like you kind of stumbled upon that. Sometimes you feel the need to really advertise that, especially
Oh,
when you're
man.
younger, right?
Mhm.
And some people, it does not, like, that does not go away as they age. And so, you have full on adults out there just advertising, I'm a this and I'm a that, and you have to, and it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. You're bringing a lot out here that you don't have to lead with that information.
Right.
Because people don't just like, people don't just barge into an office like, I'm a God-fearing Christian but no one does that. Like, nobody fucking does that.
You've clearly never lived in the South, but for the majority of the world, never.
That is true.
Have y'all heard
That is
the
true.
Lord, the praise the Lord word?
Dear
I don't know.
God. No, it's just it's all about trying to be a balanced person internally too, because like there are going to be hobbies and lifestyles and self-acknowledgements out there that when you're first adjusting to them and you're first acknowledging that shit about yourself, it becomes your entire personality for a couple of months. It does, because you are excited, you're doing something new, it's completely novel. But that honeymoon period fades away after a while, and then it just integrates into who you are as a person. And so you are a person who happens to do this, or you are a person who happens to do this, or is this. And that slow assimilation into the whole of who you are is important. And if that doesn't happen, then you are just the person who's known around as that person who won't stop talking about witchcraft, or that won't stop talking about I don't know, D&D, just a lot of stuff. Like, if you let any one thing become massively dominant in your personality, you become all about that. And it's another part of internal balance. Like, you're neglecting other important parts of who you are, and that imbalance is going to cause some shit down the line, whether it's you're neglecting your other friends that aren't involved in D&D or aren't involved in witchcraft or culture practices, if you're denying or neglecting your family or your job or anything else. Like, you can't let any one thing become the whole of who you are. Like, that seems like it's a danger.
Yeah, and just like, you can't live your whole life in magical kind of space like all the time.
Touch the grass.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Go out, touch the grass.
Please touch the grass.
Please touch.
And I'll chip in this. If you're gonna be somebody who advertises who you are, it's always better to show than to tell.
Yes.
And that doesn't mean no, go grab your katana and do a fucking demo for them for people in the driveway so they know who's like your shit, right?
Do your best mall ninja act, yeah.
Shit.
Like, you show up to the house with like a party with a pair of nunchucks, like, all right guys, I got a demo for you. Let's do this. Like, that's me fucking ridiculous.
No one wants your elevator pitch.
Like, it's important to just when you're having these conversations to make sure that you're not turning every single conversation you have with every single person back to the shit you do, because what that's initially saying to other people is, yeah, there isn't enough me in this conversation. Let's bring this back to me. It's like, don't be that guy. Don't do that. Not everything has to be about your shit or anybody else's shit. Just like, be relevant if someone asks you about it. Like, I wear some really subtle codes. I'm not real obvious about it. I don't discuss magic with people that I know don't practice it, because I'm not here to proselytize. I believe that if they're interested in it, they will come to it on their own and they'll ask me direct questions.
Yes.
And if they come to me and they ask direct questions, yeah, I'll be absolutely forthcoming. I don't give a fuck. But like if they didn't ask, I always think about that hashtag, nobody asked.
Mm-hmm.
Like
I feel like sorry, go ahead.
No, it's okay. It's just that's one of the. It was really like, what the fuck was it? So I don't spend a lot of time on Reddit because I feel like Reddit's a fucking cesspool for the most part. But watching
it's good for porn.
Yeah, it is good for porn. It's also good for like niche advice on shit. Like if I need to fix an antique, like an antique turntable, I go to Reddit to look for answers because someone has asked. But like just the social subs, where I'm seeing screen caps on r/nobody asked, and I'm like, wow, this is okay. I feel like everybody needs to see this. It's like, why do you turn a conversation into things about you when the conversation is about somebody else? It's like that.
Oh, I have friends that do that.
So do I.
I feel like where that stems from is typically somebody who didn't necessarily get enough attention growing up or didn't know how to socialize in a real healthy way, and people aren't necessarily too interested in them, and they don't feel like people know who they are, so often they take more than often like opportunities to just jump in and talk about things that are on their mind, because until those people get some kind of like validation or understanding of what they're doing, they're going to constantly like try and get external validation, which I think it's kind of like something that typically younger people do, and I think a lot of people grow out of it in their like mid-20s as they get older, ideally. Not everybody does it.
Don't become insufferable.
Yeah, and not everyone does it all the time even. Like sometimes, like I know some people who totally great to be around sober, but when they get stoned, they just can't shut the fuck up about like whatever their super special interest is. And it's like, I don't want to be that person who's like, oh, shut the fuck up about your special interest, because like that's rude and you don't want to be that person. But also there's times where it's like, if that special interest doesn't line up with you or even kind of annoys you because you're also autistic, it's like, bro, I need some air. You know? And to back up to magic, and what Fish was saying when I was going to interject, I feel like knowledge of magic is not climate change. The entire world does not need to know about it and be informed. It is not going to be a matter of life and death for all of us, you know? It isn't the same thing as civil liberties, which everybody needs to know that they have certain rights and that, you know, like a human being is a fucking human being, right? It's fundamentally different shit, you know? Like magic, it would be like going to everybody and being like, if you don't build your own home, you're not a real person. You're just a home occupier. Yeah, you've never built your own home. You know, it's kind of like that same kind of judgment, you know. It has no really relevance in anything.
It's like it's that no true Scotsman thing that nobody asked for. Somebody just Kool-Aided their man, Kool-Aid man their way into the conversation, and you're like, well, I didn't ask. Nobody asked.
No one did.
Yeah.
I was kind of thinking, kind of like of the opposite end of this, because a lot of us, you know, we're very magical people, right? So we're involved in a lot of magic things on a regular basis. I was thinking on the flip side of this, someone who maybe is practicing in a closeted way or just starting out and wants to, I guess, make their lives more magical, right? Like, what sort of practices would you kind of recommend that person incorporate into their daily lives?
Like, I want to say the biggest thing for me is the mindfulness of that reality itself. Like, if you're just starting out trying to incorporate and kind of assimilate the idea that, you know, we live in a reality that is conducive to magic on some level, depending on how you define magic, like for me, it's the interaction of the human will with reality itself, and the shifting of each of our subjective bubbles that kind of combines to create what we agree is what we all seem to subconsciously agree on as reality, like the subjectivity of reality, the objectivity of reality. But like being mindful of it on a daily basis, just like putting yourself in the moment and focusing on the things around you and how you alter the space around you in very obvious ways, in non-obvious ways. And then just acknowledging that it's there and then trying to look through the series of practices that you have been drawn to for whatever reason, and looking at the most basic parts of it. So, we go back to going back to that sort of LBRP thing.
Mhm.
Like, if you're interested in ceremonialism and you have any leaning toward Thelema, that's one of the things you're going to get told that you need to learn, the LBRP. It's one of their basic foundational rites. And the reason that they try to push it among their apprentices is because they want to, or their new initiates, is that they want the LBRP specifically to become second nature. They want you to know it inside and out. They want you to be able to recite it and go through those motions without having to check a book, without being awkward. It needs to be something you can just throw the fuck out there. And that's good. Learning those things rote is important. But initially, it's also good to reinforce the notion of magical reality for new people who are just coming in. So, like, picking one or two things that you do every day, that's awesome. Do that, whether it's mindfulness meditation, whether it's doing a Zen sit, whether it's doing the LBRP, whether it's making devotions to, whatever deities or spirits or egregores you're getting involved with. That's awesome. That helps reinforce it both to them and to you. But, like, don't use that as a yardstick to judge other people, because other people didn't ask, And
Also that.
And the other thing is, like, I know a lot of folks, especially if you grew up in the United States, but in Canada too, and a number of other places, they probably grew up with folks that very vocal about their faith. Very vocal, like very up in your face about it. Like in the South, like it was always a case of no matter where you were, if you were at work, if you were at school, there was always going to be somebody, some damn buddy who was telling you about their belief. And if they picked up a sense that you didn't believe the same things that they did, they would start in on you.
Yeah.
And so that's the stock experience. But nowadays there's also the obnoxious atheist
who
will do the exact same thing. And there is the obnoxious mage or the obnoxious witch who is always trying to push back against the others when they themselves have likely been annoyed by the other two their whole fucking lives. It's like, don't become the thing you hate most, please. Do better.
I feel like the annoying atheist is hands down the hardest person to date. Like, I can date somebody who's lukewarm about magic, just they don't really care. But somebody who's a staunch atheist can be such a fucking cunt about it sometimes, man.
They can. Like, and at the weirdest times too. Like, and you could be really good friends with them, but that's the one thing that just gets the snakes in their head talking. And they can't shut the fuck up about it. Once the snakes in their head start talking, they cannot keep themselves from coming at you.
It's like after a while. It's like after a while with atheists, like those atheists, I should say, the unpleasant ones. Like after a while, you're like, we get it, okay, my god. You're just like, I don't want to fucking hear it. It's like, I respect your opinion, but shut up.
Exactly. And that's not to say that everybody who practices magic is doing it in a theurgic or religious context. That's not what it's about. It's just about life practices, personal cosmology, personal notions of metaphysics, and whether or not someone else knows about it or cares. I
think any time that you need to couch the notion of some kind of superiority based off of your worldview or belief system, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah,
right?
there you go.
If you're essentially saying I'm a Christian and that makes me better than you, you're a fuckface. Same thing if you do it with when you're a mage, right? It doesn't make you more of a human being than another human being, right? It'd be the exact same thing if someone were to come up to you and be like, if you don't work the circus, I don't even know. It's just it's pointless bullshit and nobody needs it, right?
Well, not only that, but it suggests that the person who's doing the judging is fucking brittle, like fucking fragile. Like if the majority of what you do, or even a large substantial part of what you do, or is just going to other people and being like, well, if you don't do it this way, you're not an actual magician. Or if you practice this model, you're not an actual magician. It's like what you're doing and what you're saying by doing that. You're indicating that you as a magician or you as someone who practices depend upon putting other people down and putting down other practices that you don't necessarily understand or find worthy in order to make yourself and reinforce what you do to yourself. It's like you are using other people to validate what you think and what you believe, because you putting yourself above them is what your magic depends on, and that's pathetic. Like, that is some of the most fragile shit I have ever seen.
I have really noticed, not to continue ranting on this because I know that like this is supposed to be about like daily magic, mundane balance, but Fish and I are kind of going off about shit that we've had to deal with.
A
But
little
like,
bit.
there's also this vein of magic I see that's based on almost cult of personality shit. Like, it's not enough to do the thing and have your magical results. You have to like advertise constantly that you got the results. And it's, you know what, I understand when you get some really fucking crazy shit and you want to tell people who aren't going to judge you, right? Like I've been there. You sometimes you just need to fucking tell somebody something so that you don't feel like you're fucking crazy, right? And sometimes you can't tell them because you'll feel like you'll feel like you're fucking crazy, right? It's kind of the whole ironic beauty of it all, right? Like, you want to talk about it sometimes, but that can also devalue the act, right? Like, for example, if I gave a homeless person money today, right? And I go and I post that on Facebook, and I do that every time. I'm not really doing it for him. I'm doing it so I can get the social clout of that act, right?
You're
And
doing
Yeah.
it's
it to
very
signal. You're
similar.
doing it to signal your virtue. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's very similar with like that kind of cult personality magic where it's vampiric is what it is. It essentially relies on the other people couching their belief in you to elevate you above them in some way or field of practice so that you have power or agency where you might not have thought yourself having it before.
Yeah.
And I find that stuff is really easy to fall into. um it's naturally reinforced with how community structures work. Like, I'm not going to take shots at any big pagans out there, but I'm sure that each of us at least could think of one pagan author offhand who has been a real fuck with that kind of shit, you know? Like, it's really prevalent. And I think we can kind of double this into the whole how do you do magic and balance it in your mundane practice? You check your fucking ego and you remember that you're not better than people, and you remain humble to some degree. Like, you need to let your head soar into the clouds as a magician to see these very hoity or sometimes super fucking abstract concepts. But you have to remember that you're a human being walking around fucking piloting a flesh suit that needs maintenance and shit, you know? Like, it's balance.
Yeah, I mean, and talking about results is one thing in a community where it's results driven. But that's talking tech. That's not just, yeah, well, I did this and this and this today. Like, oh yeah, it comes off in the same way that you see different non-occult based internet personalities going off about their amazing lives, like fucking Logan Paul taking pictures of the big ass house that I most likely is going to have to sell at some point. Or, yeah, we did this weekend. We went out. It was sick. We had all these chicks, and we had a keg, and we did this and that. We went to the Hamptons, or some other shit like that. You can be that person within a culture too, and that's not any better. Like, one of the things I love about social media and a culture is that you can just see these people's daily lives, because a lot of folks don't just talk about magic on their social media. They talk about the other facets of who they are, and you get to know them as a person, not just, oh, well, I did this and this and this. So they become less and less of that person who does this specific type of magic, and they become, oh, hey, I want to talk to this person. Like, but if you just go off on nothing but magic and talk about nothing but magic, even if it's an occult-focused social media, unless you're just marketing books or marketing material, which is, a perfectly acceptable use, like, let yourself be human and let other people see you as the human.
That's one of the things that I still am and continue to be really conscious of regarding this podcast, because I was going back to what you were saying, Sophia, about like how sort of like, I guess, like cult-like mentalities pop up around certain, big figures, right? People kind of, that person gets elevated. And that's something that I definitely wanted to never, ever, ever, ever kind of perpetuate within this kind of community. Because it happens everywhere else. And I've been in groups where groups just fall apart because someone rises to group godhood and everyone else just follows suit. And it's very, very, very frustrating to deal with. Especially when you're like, no, like, can't we treat this like a collective, a community? Why can't we all just talk and have discourse? So I just wanted to kind of point that out there, that, if it also comes down to like a lot of self-policing is kind of like what we were talking about here today, not letting your ego run amok and unchecked. um but that's for someone who, kind of has like an abundance of magic in their life, versus someone who, like I was saying earlier, is more closeted, or more quiet about their practice to incorporate more magic into your life. Definitely what Fish was saying about having some kind of daily practice. But I can definitely say that, even even though, right, I'm pretty like embedded in magic, right? Like, it's all around me, it's what I do, it's the podcast. I still kind of struggle with that idea of balancing the two. But the more that I juggle, right, the more that I'm like, oh, we're doing which things now, oh, we're doing these things now, the more I kind of realize, I'm like, my whole life is really like, magic is everywhere all the time. It's not like something that you just turn off and on. It's not like a faucet, like, oh, I'm going to turn the magic on now because I need it. um it's just something that's always around you. And so the universe is constantly changing and shifting and moving around you, even if you're just, just doing your job, staring at the computer, whatever. It doesn't matter. There's always magic happening around you all the time. And so for me, what I try and do is I kind of just try and spread out my awareness, to everything around me and what's going on at any given moment. I'm not saying that I'm always like, reaching out with the force or anything, and trying to, see my whole surroundings, but especially when you get that feeling on the back of your neck, you feel a prickle, or, like, where did that draft come from? That's not, once you feel that, there's something shifting and something might need your attention, or maybe, one of your wards got pinged, you have to really be conscious of what's going on around you.
And that's part of why mindfulness is a big part of it. Just like being in the moment, being aware of your surroundings. And like having a daily practice is good if you're trying to improve your assimilation of things. So like if you're trying to make your personal life, your daily life more magical, you're trying to incorporate it into your routine, having a daily practice is good. But a lot of magicians, and a lot of really good ones, they don't do work every day, or the work that they
Mm-hmm.
do is just maintaining things. Like there are days where all I'll do is maintain my servitors, check my words, and do a couple of other things, and then that's it. That's 30 minutes of my morning. That's it.
Oh yeah,
So
same.
like there are going to be days, weeks, months where you kind of dial back your involvement. It's not that you cease to be a magician. It's not that you cease to have these same interactions with reality, but you're not pushing to do things that are new. You're not pushing to you're not pushing for heavy ritual in your life because you might not necessarily need it, and like I always plug Phil Hine for things, but one of the things that he discusses in one of his books is the magic of crisis. The notion that, yeah, every day you're a magician. That's part of your identity, but you don't have to make that everything you do. Sometimes magic only is needed when there is something serious happening, when there's a crisis, when you have a friend that's in some trouble, something like that drives you to go out and write up a ritual or dig up a ritual that you wrote a long time ago or someone else wrote and throw down for one of your friends. That's the magic of crisis. You don't have to do shit you don't have to do active handed work. It could just be passive stuff, but like, you don't have to do active work every day. It's all about your level of interest and what you want out of it. Some people go into magic because they want very specific things.
Mm-hmm.
Some people don't study it for the sake of it, and there's nothing wrong with that either. It's just, getting what you want out of it and making sure that you're taking those steps to learn and develop the things that get you what you want out of it.
Yeah, I was thinking,
Yeah.
a friend of mine, me and Rue, we have a mutual friend, and he had a relative, pass away, and he was saying to us, he said he wanted a remembrance jar. Is that what it was? That's how he phrased it.
It was a remembrance spell jar, something he pulled off of TikTok
Yeah.
/ the internet.
So like he comes to us and he finds this thing on TikTok or whatever, and he's like, I want a remembrance spell. And basically, so I said to him, I was like, okay, well, what is your intent? Like, what do you mean a remembrance spell? I'm like spells are not like Harry Potter where you memorize the words and the wand motions and then you cast the spell. So I was saying to him, I was like, what is the intent that you're trying to achieve? And basically what he was saying is he wanted to create, like, he wanted a spell that would help him and his family members, kind of ease the grieving process of this relative. And I was like, oh, okay. And he's like, well, I want to make sure like they remember the happy memories, and I want to make sure that. And I was like, well, you can't guarantee that.
That's not magic. That's just psychology. That's
just like partially.
That's just going through the grieving process and letting yourself go through the pain of it, and then getting back to the happy memories. That's just getting through grief process.
Yeah. And so, but he still wanted this kind of like magical sort of intent and focus behind it. He wanted an item to give, his family members. And so we made these, and so we dressed candles with essential oils that were particularly, suited toward, I guess really just using aromatherapy, if you really think about it, just centered toward feelings of calm, happiness, things like that, just to kind of like, settle the emotions that you may feel. And it also comes down to witchcraft too, like usually what I do, like if I'm thinking about someone who has passed on, or someone I'm just thinking about, I'll be like, I should light a candle for them, and I'll just kind of like light a candle in the house, and that'll be for them. And so I kind of just incorporated those two basic elements, of just like nice relaxing scents mixed with, you're lighting this candle with this intent of remembering this person, you're thinking about them, and that's really it. And it wasn't a big to do, and we dressed the candles and got them together in front of him, and he almost looked a little like almost like a little, I don't know, I don't want to say disappointed, but like, really, that's it? And I was like, yeah, like certain like you can't do big magic for certain things. Like some things are just mundane sort of things that you have to work through. Magic can aid you, but sometimes you just have to kind of do it yourself a little bit. Yeah, it was an interesting lesson for me too, because initially once someone comes to me and it's like, I need a spell for blah, like I start pulling out the books and I start overthinking it and I start going totally crazy. And I turned to Rue and I was like, this is ridiculous. I was like, I'm being ridiculous right now. I'm like, the intent button, then I had to text him. I'm like, what the hell do you mean remembrance spell? And that's when I needed the intent. And that's really the biggest thing, is your intent behind what you're doing. And so intent kind of overlaps with mindfulness, and how you can, like Sophia was saying in the morning, like, yeah, okay, I'm just making my coffee, but I'm also, pouring some out for my spirits too. So
yeah. Well, specifically, I don't pour it out. I put it in a cup and let them drink
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, just things like that. Very, very, very simple things that you can incorporate.
It's an interesting thing. Like, I have a number of friends that don't know anything about magic at all. And I don't advertise that, especially online with other groups. So like a writing community or a gaming community. I don't necessarily talk about those things unless they come up in a way that it makes sense for me to say something, which not always. But what the end result is that I have a number of friends that will hit me up during dark times or unhappy times in their lives to ask questions. Not ask me to do things for them, but like ask me about death. A friend of mine lost his mom not long ago, and he hit me up saying, well, is there an afterlife? What do you think about it? And he really just wanted somebody to explore those ideas with that wouldn't judge him. And that's really the primary interaction I have in areas and spheres where I'm out in some way. Like, I don't advertise, but a number of folks know enough know that it's common knowledge. Like, I find that more often than asking for spell work or, ritual work or anything like that, I get asked questions about these things because they don't know where to look, or they don't trust the things that they were taught as children. Like the person who asked me about, the afterlife in regard to his mom was raised as a lapsed Catholic, or actually Anglican probably. But like he didn't really have a lot of belief in it, and he was trying to find some belief because religion has never been a big part of his life. And so we had this these hours of conversation over the course of several months talking about the nature of death and what it could be. And I'm not about to tell somebody, this is what the afterlife is, and nobody should be able to tell you those
Mm-mm.
things. And if
No.
they try to tell you, they know unequivocally they are lying to you.
Mm-hmm.
It's just trying to give other people context for things that they don't understand, and trying to help them determine whether or not it was something maybe occult or magic aligned, or maybe it wasn't. Trying to put their fears to rest about things. And yeah, I find that that's a big part of it too. Like,
For
you're not necessarily
me,
teaching everybody about magic.
yeah,
Hmm?
for me, some of my struggle comes in, like I know, like usually, like in witchcraft and the occult, we don't really proselytize. We're not preachers. We're not handing out pamphlets and at bus terminals and getting people to come to our church. We're not doing that. But I'm not gonna lie, like especially when I meet someone, I'm if it comes up, it comes up. Especially now that I have the podcast, people will be like, hey, what do you do? I have a podcast and it's about this, and so it does come up. But when people ask me questions about witchy type things, occult type things, I get really excited. I'm not gonna lie, like I get really excited, and of course, like I teeter between like, yes, I want to be the witch that provides you with all this information and helps you, and helps you do all these things that you want to do, and also between like, hey, do you want to learn more about this shit? Because like I could teach you more about this shit if you want to know. And I get really excited because I like to teach, and that's just kind of a thing that's always been a part of me. I like to teach, and I like to spread knowledge to people. So, and I also want people to also be self-reliant too. Like I don't want people thinking like, you know I have to go see a witch for everything, or whatever it may be. Like some people, like I don't know, like I have to call my tarot reader before I do make any big decision in my life. And there are people out there that are like that, and I want people to understand, like, you have agency, you have power, you have you can do a lot of these things yourself. And it gets so tricky for me. I guess I have to check my own magical ego, and I have to be careful not to proselytize, not to preach. And I also have to understand that like sometimes people are not interested in learning how to do it for themselves. They want the thing, right? They want this particular thing, or they're asking this, or they're seeking something. But that's just like something that is difficult for me to balance, in particular about my magical and mundane life, is that I try not to be preachy about being an occultist. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's difficult, especially when someone's kind of interested and they seem like they might want to learn something. Then I get really excited.
Or especially when you're young and you think you have answers to big questions,
Yeah, that too.
It does get tiresome. Like, I used to be that person who wanted to clarify magic to people.
Mm,
Especially when I first came across chaos magic. I was surrounded by a bunch of pagans that were primarily theurgic. It was primarily a religious and devotional practice for them, not an active, results-oriented practice.
right.
And I desperately wanted to be like, it doesn't have to be this.
Mm-hmm.
But over time, like it's over 20 years ago now, but over time you start to get a better sense of what someone really wants out of it when they ask for certain things. It's about how they ask and about what they ask over. So I like
Yes.
teaching, but I like teaching people who really want to learn. And that
Yes.
there's a difference between the two. Like there's a difference between somebody who shows up and just holds their hand out and keeps their beak open
Mm-hmm.
and expects you to mother bird all of this information into them without doing any of the work themselves. I am not here to teach those people.
Mm-hmm.
That is a waste of everybody's time, because if they aren't hungry enough to learn it themselves and go out and hunt for it and do self-study, they're not going to push it any further. They're not going to turn out okay. They're going to wash out of some way. Like,
Yeah, and
that's part of why, like,
that's where
when
I
I run in, go ahead.
I was saying, I think it's really fair to have a conversation with someone, especially if like if they're coming to you asking you to like, hey, can you make me a talisman? Can you do a charm? Can you do this, and that? If they keep asking you for things, but they're saying, oh, teach me, teach me, teach me, but they're not actually learning on their own, I think it's fair to have that conversation with them and be like, hey, look, if you don't want to learn this, that's fine, but you just need to tell me that you're not interested in learning and you're more just like interested in like coming to me for a charm or talisman or whatever. It's like you have to set that expectation with people.
Mhm. You do. And there are certain folks out there that want to learn it and they do know about it, but they'll still keep coming to you because they feel like in that specific thing you are more of an expert.
Hmm.
Mhm.
I was ranting about this a few months back. I was talking about magician specialists. Like if I have a problem regarding something related to the occult,
Hmm.
say a paradigm that I don't know much about or am not terribly comfortable or really enjoy working with, like Abrahamic paradigms. I'm
Hmm.
not into that. That's not my jam. So if I've got a friend that hits me up and says, "Hey, I've got a problem with this Abrahamic shit," I'm not going to go dig through those books and try to become an expert overnight. I'm going to hit up somebody else in the community who knows more about that and works in that shit all the time.
Yes.
So like there's something to be said for like acknowledging the expertise of other people. Like I'm not the best person to go to if you want something related to healing. I can try that. I can do some of that, but the things that I've studied in that regard are personal. Like I've studied certain specific things for myself,
Hmm.
not general like theory about it. There are things that I do very well, there are things that I don't. And I feel like it within a culture, within our community, we need to acknowledge the things that we make ourselves experts in and the things we specialize in and just admit the shit that we don't.
I think we
Like,
should make ourselves like D&D character sheets, right? Like
Hmm.
of our witch
I've
God,
abilities, like RPG
I've
kind
actually
of.
talked about this with people.
Yeah.
You can, because Wizards of the Coast is actually based somewhat, right? It's not like what's it called? Mage the Ascension. That one's really fucking accurate for
it
Yeah.
if
had
you
some, it
really
had
want to
some,
get into
it,
the granulars.
well, that one had a cultist on the staff. So,
Well, I mean, so does modern Wizards of the Coast, though. That's the thing, right?
Hmm.
Like, if you go look at, I think we're at 5e, yeah, fifth edition right now. Um, a lot of shit actually breaks down really simply. Like, those people who are really into energy work, who are also fairly physical, monk,
Hmm.
right? They use key abilities and they channel their body energy to do really incredible feats, but they're not casting fucking fireballs, right?
God,
And
Right.
people who like really study the granulars of like astral magic and ceremonials, I would absolutely label them wizards to a fucking T because that's how it works. And then you get those people who are like charisma based or more with like a lineage, and that's exactly what sorcerers are. And then you have people who draw their magic from like nature and their connection to just everything around them, and that's druidry. And then you also have like theurgy with like all different types of god worship through like cleric spells, or like there's variants too between paladins, because a paladin is essentially a cleric who fights, right?
Hmm.
Not to say clerics don't fight, but paladins specialize a little bit more at it. So like for me, my base class is monk. I'm actually a black belt in taekwondo, and I studied energy work when I was younger. Then I stepped into rogue for a little bit, with my subclass being arcane trickster, because rogues pick up thievery spells, right? So it actually aligns with kind of some of the stuff I used to have to do. And then I eventually moved into spirit working, which is a lot more druidry, right? Like I literally talk to fucking plants and animals now. They don't talk back. I'm not good at that point,
Hmm.
but I think they can understand me. I feel like I'm at that point, so that's kind of neat. And yeah, you really kind of can break it down. Like, and if someone's doing like patron based magic where they're working with a specific deity, like say someone's a priestess at Hecate, that's perfect for a warlock because they're drawing their power through that being which they embody. So there's lots of different ways that you can go about actually writing yourself up as a real life D&D character. Although they don't kind of go to the same levels of heights, because it's not like we can cast miracle that alters reality and like shapes a fucking mountain into place that wasn't there
Yeah.
before.
But I was
I just
thinking it would be a cool little project, a creative project to work on to create a real life like occultist character sheet. Like, what are your specialties? What are you good at? You know, and it'd be a cool way to kind of show other occultists, hey, this is my skill set. This is what I'm good at. This is, you know, maybe we can trade or whatever.
Yeah, like trade
Work
your
together.
skills, trade
Yeah.
your knowledge. Because I mean, it would encourage magicians and occultists of varying cuts and flavors to really sit down and do an inventory about what they really know, what they really study, what they really have experience with, and where the gaps in their knowledge are. Because, like in socialization, and especially online socialization, it's easy to fall into the trap of comparing yourself to other people. And wanting to stand alongside them, or measure yourself by some kind of warped, fucked up yardstick. It's okay not to know shit. That's the nature of the the human condition. In the end, all you really, you don't know everything, and admitting that you don't know everything is an integral part of being a healthy human being. You can't just be an insufferable piece of shit. You can just be like, yeah, I know about that. Yeah, I know about that. Blah, blah, blah. But you're digging up a wiki article and trying to make it look like you know what your shit.
It's my fucking parents with everything that comes out of my fucking mouth. I'm like, yeah, this and that. My dad's like, yeah, I know. Yeah, I know.
Although, circling back to the D&D and tabletop games, you guys, I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember the Jack Chick track Dark Dungeons.
No, but I remember Hero Quest, and that was 1989, so I feel pretty good about that one.
So Dark Dungeons. Jack Chick was he was this proselytizing, very heavily Christian comic book artist who made these little tracks, these little religious tracks that were based off of comic books.
I actually learned about him through Black Mass Appeal, a Satanic Temple podcast.
Oh god.
Yeah.
So he wrote one called Dark Dungeons, and it was about the evils of D&D.
Oh boy.
And when D&D became popular in the town that I spent a lot of my time growing up in, we used to find these Dark Dungeons tracks at different like gaming shops and bookstores. And it was absolutely fucking hysterical. And where was I going with this? Okay. So the undercurrent of the Satanic Panic and then the Jack Chick tracks and everything was like, oh, D&D is evil. D&D has a culture in it. It's Satan. And early iterations of D&D, first edition, second edition, they didn't have any actual functional theory in their work. But because of all of that push toward that industry where, there was all these accusations, there were some gaming studios that legitimately did hire occultists to help write their content. Steve Jackson Games literally commissioned a book from Isaac Bonowitz, who was one of the only people in the world to have a degree in thaumaturgy, y'all. He got it from Berkeley.
Wow.
And he legitimately wrote up a book to help storytellers, people who don't study magic, people who have never used it, know nothing about it, help them improve the way that magic is presented in their storytelling.
That's amazing.
It is I bought it. It's the most, and honestly, I really like Bonowitz's theories. I don't really ken with his sort of neo-pagan approach to things, but when he's just talking about theory, I am there for it.
Can you still purchase said book?
You can pick up. I think that it's available on Drive-Thru RPG. I want to say that's where I got it. Oh. But Bonowitz was basing the stuff in that book on a book he wrote prior. I think it was 79, called Real Magic, and he was outlining the what he called the laws of magic. And when you say law of magic, you don't mean something you can or can't do. It's just it's essentially similar to a law of physics. These are the ways constants by which we they're relatively consistent observations throughout however many years, starting with the Emerald Tablet, as above so below. So he had identified 20 or so, and then nobody talked about that shit for a while, and then Bill Whitcomb wrote The Magician's Companion for Llewellyn back in the mid-90s, and he kind of did a re-examination and a restructuring of them. But it's not a limitation so much as it is hey, these are things that we have observed. You might try leaning into these if the shit you're already doing doesn't work. And it's just fascinating to see the interplay between tabletop games and magic as information becomes more accessible. Because Jack Chick wasn't right when he created those when he created the tracks, but then when Mage the Ascension came out, when a bunch of Steve Jackson stuff came out, there were occultists on the payroll there. It's like y'all created a self-fulfilling prophecy. I hope you're proud of yourselves.
Right, exactly. Like when I, like the whole reason I got into witchcraft is because I found an article on a Christian website that Harry Potter was turning kids to Wicca. So, whoopsie.
Right.
But I did want to say we are actually at an hour. I forgot to warn us at the 45-minute mark, but whatever. I was curious if anyone had any sort of like concluding kind of wrap-up statements, or is there any other particular facets of this that we wanted to kind of discuss before we wrap things up?
Yeah, it isn't necessarily going to be on the topic of mundane magic balance, but seriously, go look up Mage the Ascension, y'all. I gotta plug this because it's a little like not that known. Everybody knows about D&D 5e, but Mage the Ascension is a fairly I don't know actually if it's that old, but
Can you
it's a
obtain
fairly
it?
influential.
It's pretty old.
Can you obtain
It's a
it
fairly
for freezies or for money?
Yeah.
don't know.
If you were really specifically, if you're going to look up Mage the Ascension, you want second edition. You want the second edition book, which is out of print, but it can be found in PDF.
Okay.
I've linked it in the show notes, so
Oh,
we'll have
cool.
it up for the podcast. But like when we talk about being marauders in DKMU, that name and the concept that we kind of piggybacked off of is from Mage the Ascension.
That's because some of our founders were involved in the writing of the book. Yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, this was part of why we use a lot of the same terminology. When you talk about consensus reality, that's not only is that important in concepts like physics or quantum physics, it's also important in magic for other reasons. Not because quantum physics is magic, but because the pattern that we see in one place in reality will exist in other places. The pattern is natural for a reason. So yeah, you'll find a lot of interesting theory there, and we do end up with a lot of folks, like even back in the late 90s in the Z Cluster, which is a chaos magic news group that I was a part of for a while. There was a lot of discussion about Mage the Ascension and making it a functional paradigm. And of course, they were chaos magicians, so anything can be a functional paradigm if you can put your head behind it. So there were a lot of folks that worked within that as a loose framework, and a lot of people who stated, well, the reason that this is attractive is because it's a retelling of existing frameworks, and that both are true. If I had any homework for people, I would say, think about the things that you're really, really good at, and do like an inventory of the shit that you actually know, and then do an inventory of the shit that you don't know that you wish you did.
Yeah.
Like, do that. Just do a personal inventory. Look at what you're good at. Acknowledge what you're good at. And quit being scared of acknowledging the shit you don't know. It's okay not to know. It's okay to say, I don't fucking know. Why don't you ask this person? Or go and help somebody find something. But, like, do some self-examination, man. It's good for you.
I agree.
Also, if you're going to look into Mage the Ascension at all, I find the most enjoyable spot to start is looking at the 9 spheres of magic. I'm going to read them out really briefly. Correspondence, entropy, forces, life, matter, mind, prime, spirit, time. And I'm only going to elaborate on prime because that's the only one that's ambiguous there. Prime is one of the 9 spheres. Hang on. What does it do? Prime is a sphere of magic that governs the raw energy of reality. That's it.
Okay. Yeah. And the spheres have over, and this is just, I'm warning people about this albatross now. Since the mid 90s, people have been trying to create correspondences between the 9 spheres from Mage the Ascension and the Sephira. Don't bother. Don't try it. They don't match. You can get most of them to work, but I have seen no less than a dozen people try to do that, and none of them come up with the same thing. So don't try to create an equivalency. There isn't one, but that's okay.
But some things just don't overlap.
yeah. You can't make everything into 777. You can, like, and there's also like there's a 10th unspoken sphere, same as the Sephira.
Oh,
yeah, but
the 10th unspoken sphere. We gotta know.
Yeah, right. But
we all know about Dot.
Like you can't. That's the thing. Like, riffing on correspondences. Like we all are at least a little bit familiar with 777, which is a gigantic book of thelemic correspondences. And it's awesome that paradigm is super tidy, but it kind of draws the notion that you can create a grand unified theory of magic and things that all correspond together, all consistent, all the time, and you can't do it. Don't try. It's a giant waste of time. Just do what works for you. Don't fall for the hobgoblin of consistency in that regard. Just don't do it. That's it. We're over it now.
Sage advice.
Also, I'm not lying. That book is literally one of the books I have propping up my chair right now. I have like a stack of them.
Oh shit.
That's amazing.
It is.
Alrighty, so any other concluding thoughts, or are we just gonna wrap up here? Anyone else?
I know we talked a lot more on the end of like balancing chilling the fuck out and not just doing magic, because I kind of feel that's like on the end of where we're at with it a little bit. But if you're on the end of trying to get into it more, there's a few things that really helped me when I was starting out. One is seeking community, like other people who are learning, other people who know something of a specific field. If you have anyone who's lineage based of a similar thing that you're doing, reaching out to them, and staying with the wonder of it all. Like magic doesn't have to be a spirituality, but if it really sparks that in you, feed it, because it really helps you go into it and just kind of like let it ignite your passions. And if something's fun and enjoyable, try to explore that. I feel like that's the best way I could advise that.
I like that.
Caveat to that: if you're going to go and find communities of magicians and work through your wonder and continue reaching through, when you encounter someone who is, like we talked about earlier, using other people to validate their own work, tell them that you didn't ask.
Mhm.
Tell them that you don't care what they think. You don't care if they do believe that your technique is good enough or your paradigm is good, or if they, come out of the woodwork to let you know that that won't work or that doesn't work or that is stupid, which is primarily what I see happening in like beginner communities. Tell them you didn't fucking ask. Like, defend your work. Don't let people psych you out of your work. Don't let people thieve your joy or your wonder, because there are people out there who subsist on and keep their practice going by like sucking the joy out of young people who are learning magic. Do not let them do it. Tell them to fuck themselves. The
Absolutely.
End. And the flip side to that is also, if you're new, don't go up to somebody who's been doing the craft for 20 years and talk to them like they ain't shit either. Do have a little bit of respect, like you would talk to, like you're talking to somebody who's just not a piece of shit. Like give people the benefit of the doubt. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And if you are looking for a community and one that is growing and very supportive, we do have one. We're building one on Discord. The link for that is in the show notes of this episode. So please,
come hang out with us.
Come on in. We've had a little bit of activity recently. We've been chatty, so it's been fun.
This episode was spawned by a discussion in there.
Actually, yes, this was someone mentioned this, that we should revisit this topic, and so we have. So for now, we are going to wrap it up here, and we will see you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's cool.
Perfect.
Hello?
Right?
Perfect example.
Exactly.
Calling to remind you of your COVID-19 vaccine appointment.
Oh my god, you and Jay are getting yours on the same day. Oh, no,
sorry.
No,
about
it's
that.
Friday. Mine's Friday.
Did I put you on mute? No, I didn't. Oh,
No.
shit, sorry.
That's okay.
Weird.
Well, we're very happy
Yeah,
you're
I've got-
getting
so
your
Glad you're
booster.
getting your vaccine.
Yeah, get that
Booster
shot.
time.
Get shot.
Get shot.
By a booster.
It's the only type of getting
It's
shot.
the only type of shot I am gonna let you have. I tell you what, that or a shot of liquor.
Me and my friend Ken, when it was the last FairCon that we were at, we were joking around, and we were thinking of creating like a comic book character called the Inoculator, and he was just like this guy, like this really grizzled guy from like, I don't know, he's been like in hiding for a while since the last round of vaccinations that we needed, and the CDC calls him out of hiding because everyone's just fucking around now, and he just loads up like
God,
Nerf
it needs to
guns
be-
full of vaccines and just, I am the inoculator.
It needs to be a sort of that stereotypical scene where you go to the old hero and you're like, I got a job for you. I
Yep.
said I'd never do it again.
Exactly that kind of vibe. Oh, I've been toying around with
But
an
out
idea
there
for a
right
script
now,
because I think
man,
it would be
there's
fucking
millions
hilarious.
of unvaccinated people who
That's
don't
not
even
my
give
problem.
a fuck. Buddy,
After
it
what-
is when your daughter might catch a Zeta variant of the COVID. No, not Zeta. They said it was never gonna come out. Fuck those bastards. Yeah, they ask if I'm back. I'm thinking I'm back.
All right,
He also
so
used to have like a mullet and be missing one eye.
yes.
Yeah.
Oh my god,
And
I
have a
love this.
submachine gun with a suppressor for no fucking explained reason. He never shoots it. He always has it, and he has exemplary trigger discipline, but he never shoots the fucking thing.
Never does.
Jay,
Mhm.
what were you gonna say?
No, I was saying we need to make this a thing because you guys are like you're on the same exact train of thought that me and him are on. It was just so fucking perfect. I almost feel like I have to do it. I have to bring him into it. I have to bring this guy to life.
Do it.
Oh god.
Do it. I'll write some of the dialogue if you need it. Oh my
Oh
god.
yes, for sure. But I'm gonna keep all of that in the episode as a nice little intro.
Do it.
Today
Welcome to
we
the
actually
Adventures of the Inoculator.
the inoculator. Oh my god, it could be an audio drama. That would be fun.
I would
Ah.
love to get involved in an audio drama. That would be amazing.
Yes.
It would be a blast.
Okay. We'll
It's
put
like I
it.
won awards for
projects?
like dramatic interpretation in high school, like repeatedly
Oh,
over and
shit.
over again, and I haven't gotten to
Yes.
use it for hardly anything.
Oh my god!
So-
All right, we're doing.